Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving Up Live right here on YouTube Live and Twitter. I am Bryson Carver. What an excellent show we got for you guys today. All kinds of NBA talk. March Madness has officially begun, and it's already been what you'd expect. It's been madness. My brackets, like everybody else's, are in the trash. They're dead. But you know what? That's kind of the nature of this tournament. So all kinds of stuff to talk about. Before I get into my first topic, I will go over some of the scores in college basketball currently on right now. As far as see if I can get pulled up. Here we go. Of course, we had the first four last night. Thus far, we have Baylor beat Hartford today, 79-55. Baylor advances to the second round. The shock of the day, Oral Roberts upset Ohio State. Watch that game start to finish. Crazy finish to that game. The Edwards kid at the end had a wide open three to try and tie it and couldn't get it to go. So just a crazy game between the Buckeyes and Oral Roberts. So Oral Roberts advances to the next round to take on Florida, who is the team that actually killed my bracket before it really even got started. An overtime win over 10th seed Virginia Tech, 75-70. Arkansas beat Colgate, 85-68. Illinois beat Drexel, 78-49. Texas Tech beat Utah State, 65-53. And currently the games we got going on right now, Loyola Chicago and Georgia Tech are in a tight ball game with 3.5 minutes left in the game. Loyola Chicago with a 59-54 lead. And currently my Tennessee Volunteers are trying to make a comeback. You see I'm repping my Vols right here. Sorry for the podcast audience. Down as many as 20. Now we're down 13. So we'll see what happens. We're struggling right now. So just hopefully we can get this done by the time the show's over. But let me start off with something that's just straight up messed up. So of course the men's and women's tournaments are starting about the same time. I believe the women's tournaments might start tomorrow, if I remember correctly. And a player for the Oregon women's team highlighted, what's messed up. So we see that the guys, well, you know what? Let me give an example. So she posted a video. This player for Oregon, the Oregon women's team, she posted a video about saying, "Hey, look at the men's weight room, look at the women's weight room." And sorry for the podcast audience, but for the live audience, here you go. Here you go. That's the that's it. That's what we got. Women's college basketball and college basketball in general is, we talk about equality all the time, and we want equality. And then you see the NCAA doesn't give these incredible female athletes anything, and then the male athletes are like, "Oh, we're just going to give you everything." It's like, what? I'm not saying you should give the men what you give the women. I'm saying you should give the women what you give the men. It's as simple as that. And so I just thought I'd start the show with that. It's messed up when you look at it. The fact that the women's get the shaft pretty much, and the guys get everything. Why don't both sides get everything? Why you don't have to screw the women over? I mean, come on, this is messed up. It's as simple as that. I just thought that point that out to start the show. So now let me shift to the LA Lakers. Let me shift to LeBron James, who was great last night for the Lakers in a big win for the Lakers over the Charlotte Hornets, 116-105. LeBron was great, like I said. Man dropped 37, 8, and 6. 14 for 22 shooting for the field, and 4 for 9 from 3. So LeBron was balling. And by the way, you heard the quote, or at least I did, from LaMelo Ball, right? I'm going to get into his dad, Lavar Ball, later in the show. But I heard the quote from LaMelo Ball where he was saying, I didn't really, I'm not juiced up that much to play LeBron. And I'm thinking, I didn't talk about it in the show yesterday, but I'm thinking in my head, you better take this thing personally, LeBron James. This kid, this 19-year-old, he's calling you out. The second greatest player in the history of basketball, without question, a Mount Rushmore NBA player. And this kid's like, oh, cool, it's LeBron. All right, this is just any other game, like it's just another game in Sacramento or Memphis. And so I see that, and I'm like, oh, you need to take this thing personal, LeBron. And LeBron did just that. Like I said, 37, 8, and 6, 14 for 22 from the field, and 4 for 9 from three-point range. And so I'm seeing this game, and you see what Kyle Kuzma said last night. He was saying that, hey, look, the NBA MVP, it's political. It's whoever the media wants to be the MVP is going to be the MVP. And I'm like, thank you, Kyle Kuzma. Now, he later said LeBron should have like 8, 9, 10 MVPs. Now, I think that's stretching it a little bit. But if the fact that LeBron James, and I talked about this last week, the fact that LeBron James not only has 4 MVPs, but he hasn't won an MVP in 8 years. LeBron James, that guy, he's not won an MVP in 8 years. Think about that. That's insane. That's ridiculous. Heck, the fact that Michael Jordan only has 5 MVPs is ridiculous. That's the greatest player ever. He should have more than 5. I mean, come on. So I was just thinking about what MVPs should LeBron have won. Well, let's go to 2010, 2011, LeBron's first season in Miami. He should have been the MVP over Derrick Rose. His numbers were better. And by the way, once we got to the playoffs, and I know what you're going to say, hey, the NBA MVP is not a regular season award. Okay, that's fair. But shouldn't it factor? Shouldn't we all agree, like, your legacy is defined by what you do in the playoffs? We all know that. What do you do in the playoffs? What do you do when it matters most? Now, if that were the case, if the postseason factored in MVPs, yeah, Kyle Kuzma is probably right. LeBron does deserve 8, 9, 10 most valuable player awards. But it's a regular season award. Now, I think LeBron James should have 6. I think he should have 6 today. Because in 2010, 2011, he should have won the MVP over Derrick Rose. He had a better season than Derrick Rose. And for what it's worth, the Heat dominated the Bulls in the Eastern Conference Finals that year. And then the second MVP, I believe, is as much as I love this player that ended up winning the MVP, LeBron should have won it over Kevin Durant in 2013-14. Okay, his numbers across the board were better. The Heat got further in the playoffs. Of course, the Heat got to the finals. What's new? LeBron's in the finals. And Oklahoma City lost in the Western Conference Finals to the San Antonio Spurs. So I think LeBron should have 6. But it goes to what I've said for a while, is look at Giannis. Yeah, first of all, Giannis has been balling recently. And Giannis, when you look at like the 5 names for MVP, kind of the 5 finalists for the MVP award, it's Embiid. It's the injury to Embiid is going to hurt him, right? You got to play bare minimum. You got to play like 65 games at the minimum. You got to play 65 in order to have an opportunity to qualify for the MVP award. And so that's going to hurt Embiid, but he's still in the top 5 today. And Joel Embiid's still in the top 5 for the MVP voting. Then you got Jokic is in there, and James Harden is in there, and of course LeBron. Nobody's brought up Giannis. Giannis's numbers this year are very, very similar, almost identical to last year. So my question is this: what's up? It's pretty simple. What's up? The media gets tired of guys, and it's messed up. This is why I believe the MVP should be voted on by very select members of the media, like the best of the best, and then from there on out, coaches and players. Coaches, players, and select members of the media should be who votes for the MVP award. Because if that were the case, I don't think Russell Westbrook would have an MVP. James Harden should have won that year over Westbrook. Okay, James Harden should have 2 MVPs, the back-to-back years. He should have beat Westbrook that in 2016-17. I don't care Westbrook averaged a triple-double. Okay, outside of, rebounds, Harden was a better player. Points and rebounds, Harden was a better player. Houston was a better basketball team as far as record. And James Harden it's not like he was working with a whole lot more than Westbrook was. Okay, James didn't exactly have a second superstar. Okay, and by the way, Houston beat OKC in 5 games in the playoffs. Okay, look across the board, you could say it's very possible Derrick Rose would not have an MVP because LeBron would have won over him in 2010, 2011. So we just got, Shaq would have won MVP over Steve Nash. I believe it was in 2000, was it 2008? I think it was 2008. Steve Nash won his second MVP award, and Shaq beat him out, Shaq should have beaten him out. And so we just got to kind of step back and see, what is the MVP award? Is it really most valuable player or most interesting story? Because we can just turn it into the MIS, the most interesting story. Because, I get it. The media, they love a good story. And I get it. Hey, we all do. We all want to say, Oral Roberts beating Ohio State. Hey, that makes the tournament all the more interesting. Can Oral Roberts beat Florida and advance to the Sweet 16? We love those. But at the end of the day, man, who was the best player this season? Thus far, with Embiid hurt, LeBron has had the best season. Look at his numbers. By the way, Anthony Davis has been out for about a month now. And, the Lakers have the 4-game losing streak. But then they get back on their feet. They get Dennis Schroeder back. And all of a sudden, the Lakers are the second seed in the West. I believe they're only 2 games back of Utah for the first seed in the Western Conference, which I predicted before the season they would be. And I didn't. Listen, if you told me Anthony Davis is going to be out for a month, mid-February to like late March, so really a month and a half, I would say the Lakers would be like the 3 seed. And that's possible. But they're 2 games back of the 1 seed and the best record in basketball without Anthony Davis, who is without a doubt a top 10 player. So just keep that stuff in mind. Like, LeBron's still putting up great numbers, as of course he does. And still, at the age of 36 years old, we still view the Lakers as the favorites to get out of the West. And I believe today, even without Anthony Davis, I'd still take the Lakers to win the Western Conference. I would. Do I trust the Utah Jazz? Utah's not been playing well this last week since the All-Star break. Do I trust the Utah Jazz? I love Donovan Mitchell. Outside of Donovan Mitchell, do I trust anybody on that Utah roster? Okay, do I trust Joe Ingles? Mike Conley can be up and down in the playoffs. I dang sure don't trust Rudy Gobert. Okay, Quinn Snyder, I don't know. Quinn Snyder's a great regular season coach. He's not that great in the postseason. So just keep that stuff in mind. The Clippers, stop. Just stop. I was on the Clippers last year. I'm done. I'm done with the Clippers. I've retired from that arena. I'm done with the LA Clippers. They're not. People are saying they're better, this year than they were last year. No, they're not. No, they're not. Ty Lue's a good head coach. He's not Doc Rivers. Look what Doc Rivers is doing in Philadelphia. So Doc was not the problem. The problem is Kawhi's a great player. Paul George is a very, 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 very good player. He's not a great player. Okay, so you got the 2 stars, 1 superstar, 1 star. The problem is, where's the leadership? You got to, listen, we think about football as, the NFL is kind of the ultimate leadership game, and it is. But you do need leaders in even you say, well, Kawhi Leonard took the Raptors to the championship in 2019. He was the best player. He wasn't the leader. Kyle Lowry was the leader of that team. Okay, Steph Curry was the leader. Even when KD was the best player, Steph was the leader of those Golden State teams. LeBron was the leader of all those teams in Miami, the team in Cleveland, and the team in LA last year that won the finals. Okay, Tim Duncan was the leader of the Spurs. So Dirk in Dallas, we can just go on and on and on. So leadership does matter in the NBA, and the Clippers don't have one. They don't have one in their head coach. They don't have one in their star player. Heck, is Lou Williams their leader? Is Pat Bev their leader? If Patrick Beverley's your leader, you got bigger problems than we thought. I get it. He's a grit and grind player. He plays his tail off, and I respect him for that. But if Patrick Beverley's your leader, you got bigger problems than we thought. So then we look down the West. Phoenix, Chris Paul, you see what he's done over there to turn a Phoenix team that almost made the playoffs last year into a team that is now the 3 seed in the West. Okay, but I don't see Phoenix getting out of the second round. If they get hit with a tough matchup in the first round, I don't know if you never know. You never know. So I'm just saying I don't trust any of these teams to beat the Lakers, even if LeBron doesn't have Anthony Davis. Do we say that in Denver if they're missing Jamal Murray? No, we're not saying that. Jokic is a great player. Jokic is probably a top 10 player, like right around 10, 11th best player in the league. But he's not leading the Nuggets anywhere. Yeah, I don't think they can get to the conference finals without his second star, Jamal Murray, because we all know you got to have the second star to at least get to the finals. With the Lakers, I don't know if they do. Okay, if Donovan Mitchell doesn't have Mike Conley, I don't think Utah gets out of the second round, depending on their matchup. If the Clippers don't have Paul George, I don't think that hurts them that much because we see what Paul George is in the playoffs. But say they don't have Lou Williams, their spark off the bench. If the Lakers don't have Anthony Davis, who's a top 10 player, someone even argue top 5 player, we still see the Lakers. Oh, they'll win the West. Now, can they beat Brooklyn? That's if Brooklyn gets to the finals, I don't know. That's, if LeBron pulled that off, then we're talking GOAT now. We're talking this guy's probably the greatest player of all time if he took down Brooklyn. So, the fact that MVP is even a discussion this year is kind of laughable to me. Because I kind of said, like, look, two things. Once Anthony Davis got hurt in a game against the Nuggets, it was a Sunday night game against the Nuggets a month and a half ago, or it was about a month ago. I said, okay, two things. Number one, the Lakers will be fine. Okay, they can stay afloat without Anthony Davis. Number two is I'm worried about LeBron's workload. I'm worried he'll have to play too many minutes. And number three, this is the prime opportunity for LeBron James to take home the MVP award. And he's doing that right now. Now, you say if Embiid was healthy, I would say, yeah, he's probably the favorite if he's healthy. And clearly he's having the best season of his career. I would take Joel Embiid slightly over LeBron. But with Embiid hurt, I think LeBron's the favorite for MVP. I mean, he is. James Harden's played really well in Brooklyn. But again, do we trust James Harden in the playoffs? I know it's a regular season award, but if it's most valuable player, I'm just saying, take Jokic off the Nuggets. Probably a fringe playoff team in the West. Take Embiid out of Philadelphia. In the East, they're the 6, 7 seed. Okay, take Harden off the Nets. Say there's no Kevin Durant because KD hasn't played in a month. Say there's no Kevin Durant. Take James Harden off the Nets. Kyrie put him in position to make the playoffs last year for what it's worth. Kyrie isn't exactly the guy to lead a team to a championship whatsoever, but he can, get you to the playoffs maybe. The Lakers, take LeBron off the Lakers, just good night. It's the Pelicans. Anthony Davis, he's a great player. There's no question about it. He's probably a future Hall of Famer. But he was the best player in a lot of Pelicans teams, some that actually had legit talent. Remember his last year in New Orleans, they had Drew Holiday. They had Julius Randle. We see what Julius Randle's turned into with the Knicks. They had some solid players in that team. They had I'm trying to remember what the kid's name was that could shoot. I think he's playing overseas now. Nikola, somebody, I can't remember his name. He got traded to the Bucks midseason. I can't remember who he was. But good shooter. So that was a good New Orleans team. And we talk about the Lakers supporting cast outside of Davis and Schroeder. They kind of been, and Kuzma, by the way, is playing really well. But Davis has been out. That's not sure you're getting from everybody on every night. Damian Jones, Marc Gasol, not what I thought he'd be. Wesley Matthews, definitely not what I thought he'd be. He's had a terrible season. Who else? Of course, they lost Rondo. They lost Dwight Howard. Looking down the Lakers roster, Horton Tucker, really, you going to trust him to come up big in these big games? So I'm just saying, you look at the Lakers roster right now, and if there's no LeBron, you could kiss the playoffs goodbye. Forget the finals. You can kiss the playoffs goodbye. If you don't have LeBron James for a full season. So just keep that stuff in mind. LeBron is 100% the front runner for MVP, and Kyle Kuzma is right. I think Kyle Kuzma is wrong. He shouldn't have 8, 9, or 10 MVP awards, but I think he should have 6. He should have won in 2010, 2011 over Derrick Rose, and I think he should have won in 2013-14 over Kevin Durant. And I love Kevin Durant, and I respect the heck out of Derrick Rose, but LeBron had better seasons than they did. But Kuzma is right that the award is political. The fact that Giannis is not even being, I'm not saying Giannis is the leader for MVP. I don't think he is. I said LeBron is. But the fact that nobody's even talking about Giannis, because, Embiid, he's having a great season, but you got to have the storyline with the great season. So, I mean, the fact that it's a crime that Kobe Bryant retired with 1 MVP. That's just wrong. Kobe Bryant's the 4th greatest player of all time. That's just wrong. So we got to be honest. I think select members of the media, like 10 members, like make this thing very, very kind of, exclusive. Members of the media, and then coaches and players should be who votes for MVP. That's all I'm saying. So let's shift to a guy who's in the news at this rate probably once every 2 months. Guy by the name of Lavar Ball. And he's putting a target on his sons once again. He was doing an interview recently, and he said he was talking about both his sons. He was talking about, first of all, LaMelo, who's having a really good season in Charlotte. And he said that LaMelo shouldn't take advice from Michael Jordan, basically saying because Jordan hasn't won a championship since 1998, which I don't get the logic behind that. Jordan has not been a good owner, although I will say this. I'll give Jordan credit here. This is a nice Charlotte team. This is you see them on House of Highlights on IG and stuff, but I've watched some games. This is actually a pretty good basketball team. Not saying they'll win a playoff series, but it's probably the best team that Jordan's had in Charlotte, even without Kemba Walker, which, kind of surprised me. But saying LaMelo shouldn't take advice from Michael Jordan is absurd. You think if Michael Jordan walks up to you, the GOAT, if Michael Jordan walks up to you and he's wanting to give you advice, you're saying you're just going to, I'm you know what? With all due respect, Mr. Jordan, I'm good. I got this. He'd probably sit, but the meme of him watching the Gary Payton video on the iPad during The Last Dance and him throwing his head back and laughing, that's probably what he'd do. He'd just laugh in your face if you rejected advice from him. Basketball advice and business advice for that matter. And so it's just ridiculous. And then LaVar says, he talks about Lonzo, and he says, yeah, I hope Lonzo gets traded by the Pelicans. He said that the 2 best players on the team, Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram, are bad for Lonzo and aren't playmakers. Oh my goodness. Okay. Brandon Ingram made an all-star game last year. Zion Williamson was an all-star this year. They're better than Lonzo. And Lonzo's having a good season, by the way. He's having a great season shooting the 3 ball. I think he's shooting like 39%. So he's knocking down open shots when he gets the opportunity. I think he's actually shooting a better percentage from 3. But it's just kind of ridiculous when you think about it with Lonzo and LaMelo. The fact that LaVar's saying, no, you don't need to take advice from Michael Jordan in regards to LaMelo Ball. And Lonzo, now listen, I had the Pelicans as a playoff team this year. Stan Van Gundy has not done a great job. I said it from the beginning. They should not have fired Alvin Gentry. I thought that was a big, big mistake. I know they disappointed in the bubble. Alvin Gentry's a better coach than Stan Van Gundy. I'm sorry. No disrespect to him at all, but Alvin Gentry's a better coach than Stan Van Gundy. They should not have fired him. But at the same time, you're putting the target on Lonzo's back again. You're putting the target on LaMelo's back again. And so, I'll say this. Star players in the NBA must like LaMelo Ball because you see, LeBron, that they dap up. They're giving each other a hug after the game. So I don't think LeBron would do that if he had an animosity towards anybody. Draymond Green at the end of a game between the Warriors and the Hornets, dapping up LaMelo, gave him a hug after the game. So, I guess you would think there'd be more animosity between the Ball brothers and the rest of the NBA, but Lonzo's a pretty likable kid, and seems like LaMelo's a likable kid. Again, I didn't like what LaMelo said about LeBron, and again, LeBron, to quote Michael Jordan, took that personally. But you just look at it and you say, what some of the things LeVar has done, I commend him for. You can make an argument that LeVar got Lonzo back in 2017, drafted number 2 overall. Because we talked about, and Lonzo had a great season, his only season, his freshman season at UCLA. But we got to the Sweet 16, and Lonzo got schooled by De'Aaron Fox at Kentucky. You remember that game? De'Aaron Fox was just all over Lonzo from tip-off to the final buzzer. Like, that, to me, should have secured De'Aaron Fox as the number 2 overall pick, and we would all agree De'Aaron Fox in Sacramento, I understand they're not winning, but it's not, not his fault. De'Aaron Fox has been a better NBA player than Lonzo Ball has. LaMelo, the only reason we know anything about LaMelo is LaVar. Like, we see guys, I mean, there's plenty of brothers in the NBA. You've got the Lopez brothers. Giannis has 2 brothers in the NBA. The Holiday brothers, there's Justin, Drew, and I can't remember the other Holiday's name. There's Justin Holiday, there's Drew Holiday, who's the best one, and I can't remember the other one's name, but there's 3 Holiday brothers in the league, and I think 2 of them actually play for the Pacers. And then, nobody was talking about any of them to this kind of hype because of, they're brothers in the NBA. And I'm not trying to discredit, Lonzo or LaMelo, because they're absolutely NBA players and they're absolutely top 5 draft picks. Although that might be debatable for Lonzo in 2017, considering that draft class. But the point is that you look at the marketing for that LaVar has put up front for these kids, and I'm like, well, we're talking about him. We're talking about LaVar Ball. We're talking about Lonzo. We're talking about LaMelo. Heck, we were talking about LiAngelo, and the only NBA experience he's gotten is like a couple of tryouts and a couple of G League games. Like, LiAngelo was not an NBA player. He's proven that. No team has signed him. Like, the Lakers signed him briefly. I think the Pistons even gave him a shot. He's not good enough to be in the NBA. The other 2 are. But we wouldn't talk about just a random tryout for some guy if his dad wasn't hyping him up the way that LaVar is. And listen, I respect LaVar for the fact that he's there for his kids. He is. He defends his kids. He's there for them. I just feel like comments like this, comments like saying, LaMelo shouldn't take advice from Jordan, what good's that going to do him? Like, is that going to hype him up? Is that going to, that's not going to help him. You look at Lonzo and you say, dissing Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram, could that hurt his relationship between those 2 players? I hope it doesn't. I don't think it will, but you just don't say some of these things if you're LaVar to put a target on your son's back like this, especially on his own team. So that's the issue I have with it. Okay, final topic of the day. A little bit of shorter show today, but final topic. I didn't really get to talk about this much yesterday, but one of the moves that in free agency that surprised me a lot was the fact that the Washington football team signed Ryan Fitzpatrick. Now, of course, a week ago they didn't have a quarterback outside of Taylor Heineke. They signed Heineke, I think, to like a 2-year deal, minimum salary. Okay, he'll be their backup quarterback. But if Taylor Heineke's their starter, I understand he had the big game against Tampa Bay. That's, you're not going that far. I know he played well against Tampa Bay, but can he do that for 16 games? I highly doubt it. But that's a backup quarterback, though. He can give you a couple good games. If your starter gets hurt for 3 or 4 games, he'll give you a couple of good games. That's what the best backups do. That's what you pay them to do. But if they were going to sign a backup quarterback, I'm talking about Washington here, if they were going to sign, a backup quarterback, which they did with Ryan Fitzpatrick, why not just go with another backup who's going to get released, who's going to get released in the next couple of days? And that's Marcus Mariota. Why not Marcus Mariota? First of all, for what it's worth, the man's won a playoff game back in 2018 against the Kansas City Chiefs. Matter of fact, the Titans were down 21-3 in that game and came all the way back and won. Mariota actually threw a touchdown pass to himself, as crazy as that sounds. So just all kinds of craziness in the career of Marcus Mariota. He's been up and down. I understand that. His throwing motion is weird. It's like a Papa shot almost. He's got like just a weird throwing motion. But we saw the game that he came in. Derek Carr got hurt in that game against the Chargers. I believe it was in week 15 last year. It was a Thursday night game. And Derek Carr gets hurt early. And Marcus Mariota comes in, and he looks like a starter. And so it's just really interesting to me that nobody's really talked about him. Nobody's even inquired about signing him. Now, he'll get a job. He'll get a second opportunity. But I just think that's really interesting to discuss there, that Ryan Fitzpatrick's good. He's a good backup, but he can be turnover prone. We have the Fitzmagic games where he looks like Patrick Mahomes, and then we have the 5 interception games and where he fails to break 225 passing. So I'm just saying, you look at it and you say, how does Ryan Fitzpatrick get the job over Marcus Mariota? Like, again, for what it's worth, Marcus Mariota's won a playoff game. He's got a winning record in the NFL. Okay? So it's a better alternative than Ryan Fitzpatrick for Washington. So I will say that. But it's just something to consider. So that is all the time we have for today's show. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. March Madness is continuing now. All kinds of crazy games going on right now. So hope everybody has a great weekend. Catch us on Monday. Please continue to stay safe. God bless you all.